Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome to Adventures in History. Today's topic is Dearest, Mother and Dad. Love, Ruth, John, Mark, and Pamela. Ruth Smallshaw Ray's Letters to Her Parents. 1957, Part 105. February 14th, 1957. Dearest Mother and Dad. Our trip to New Zealand and Australia in 1956. The greatest experience of our lives so far. John S. Ray. When John was elected president of the Cleveland Junior Chamber of Commerce in June 1956, we knew that a big year was in store. Among the many congratulations at the inaugural ball, I also received condolences from ex-presidents' wives who remembered it as their year to stay home. We knew that there was a possibility of a trip to New Zealand for the 11th World Congress of Junior Chamber International in Wellington, New Zealand in November. The past president, Steve Batuker, and his wife Irene had flown to Scotland the previous November to attend the 10th World Congress. However, Steve had been sponsored by Republic Steel, his employers, and Irene's fare across the Atlantic was only about 2/3 regular fare. No such sponsor did we have, being self-employed, and there is no family plan across the Pacific Ocean. Being almost halfway around the world, the trip would cost close to $2,000 each, so that the possibility of going seemed slimmer. In the next few months, we were to have our hopes raised and shattered so many times that by the time the executive committee and the board of JCs passed the motion to raise the money and send us, we were almost numb. It was mainly due to the tremendous efforts of John's good friends, Don McQuilkin, third vice president, and Bob Nelson, who not only got the JCs to pass it, but spent tireless hours mailing requests to Cleveland Industries to help sponsor the trip. They voted $1,500 toward the trip. The Chamber of Commerce, who approved the solicitations, were interested in having a representative at the Olympics in preparation for the Pan American Games that Cleveland is having in 1959. They gave $700 towards sending us over from New Zealand to Australia for the Olympics. This final step was only decided about 2 weeks before we were to leave, and many things were still to be settled. Since we would be gone a month, John's law partner had to give approval. If I were to go, we asked John's mother to look after the children. Not many mothers would be willing to take on a lively 2-year-old and 3 almost 4-year-old for a month. Then there were shots, income tax clearance, and re-entry permits for me, passports, visas, a television appearance and news photo and passport photo. Spring in New Zealand, summer in Hawaii, fall across the United States, and tropical in the Fiji Islands. 44 pounds limit on luggage and a variety of events to attend at the Congress made wardrobe planning a problem too. Finally, departure time came near. I packed the children and almost everything they owned, it seemed, tricycles, wagons, toys, clothes, and Friday, November 2nd, 1956, on a gorgeous, sunny, clear, warm day, drove them to Sandusky. They were delighted with the prospect of staying with Grandma and didn't mind us leaving them. I was quite misty-eyed as I drove home. I had my hair done and wound up a few details, and then the JCs had a box supper social, sort of a farewell dance. It was a very foggy night, home at 2:30 a.m., packed until 4:30 a.m., and a bon voyage telegram arrived at 7:30 a.m. We packed, repacked, weighed, and reweighed until Bob and Audrey Nelson, 3 kiddies, and 1 expected, came to drive us to the airport. Bill Lovell and son, Mommy at home with a new baby, Don and Char McQuilkin and little girl, and 1 expected, Steve Bedeker, the 1955 president, Bill Harmon and Bob Becker, all JCs, were out to wave us farewell and take pictures. November 3rd. It was a glorious day, sunny, warm, a clear flight with beautiful clouds. Looked like the Antarctic outside with mounds of soft white clouds. We changed planes in Denver, Colorado, where there was some snow on the ground. We saw a few hills and mountains before darkness came down. In San Francisco, we went to the Canterbury Hotel at 7 o'clock p.m. Saturday night, and the clerk said, "Mr. Ray?" We were overcome. Bill Geiselman, our travel agent and good friend, had really made good arrangements. It was a nice, quiet hotel in Nob Hill. Steep hills, many interior decorating shops, modern, oriental, fascinating atmosphere, many hotels and mink stoles. November 4th. A lovely, clear, sunny day. We had a Sunday morning breakfast at Sears. Fresh raspberries and 18 tiny Swedish pancakes. A wonderful breakfast. We found San Francisco such an interesting city with its combination of oriental and modern in interior decorating shops, many apartment hotels and eating places. We took a tour of the city. The guide pointed out the part that was destroyed by fire and the street that was dynamited to prevent the spread of fire. We visited a lovely residential section, saw the house of one man's family. However, there is no more available building space, and most homes have very small lots. We saw Cliff House at Seal Rocks and went to a terrific smorgasbord down at Fisherman's Wharf. We had our first ride on a cable car, and in the evening went up to the Mark Hopkins Hotel to the top of the Mark. This really made the trip worthwhile, one of my most exciting memories up to that time. It was so beautiful to look down all around at the city lights, harbors, hills, and bridges. The cocktail lounge with its huge plush sofa and dimly lit atmosphere provided a very romantic setting to view the city. November 5th. Clear, fine, and warm. We went to have the suitcase handle fixed and did a little shopping. Slippers for John, had brunch and went on a tour of Muir Woods. A damp, cool walk, interesting, huge redwood trees. We saw more of the bridges and went over the Golden Gate Bridge and saw Sing Sing Island from the distance. We saw more hillside homes and had the most delicious apple pie and coffee at the station in Muir Woods. At the hotel, we saw so many elderly women, obviously well-to-do widows, well-dressed, living at the hotel. We had a superb roast beef dinner at an old English restaurant. The men wore red coats, swallow-tailed. We saw Adlai Stevenson and Estes Kefauver on television. Very sad. The 1956 U.S. presidential election is tomorrow, and they look so tired and know they'll lose. We packed and wrote cards, and Wendell and Jean Ford arrived, the National Junior Chamber president and his wife, and John Reed, the vice president of the San Francisco JCs. They drove us for a view of the city. Our last glimpse of San Francisco and all those sparkling lights and glistening water and the stars at midnight. How lovely. To the airport. Wade, a cocktail party to send us off. Flashlight pictures with the banner, and away we go. We had a pretty good sleep on the plane. We were with a group of 15 JCs. Jean and I were the only two wives. Some JCs had gone ahead. With us were Doug Hogue, past international president from Cincinnati, Ohio, Fred Sutton, our tour director, who really had his troubles, originally from Holland, Dr. Vargas from Honduras, Central America, Bill Laird, president of Minneapolis, who is trying to get the Congress site for 1958, and Chuck Pren from Illinois. November 6, 1956. We arrived in Hawaii at 7 o'clock a.m. How lovely and very hot. We were met by Hawaiian hula girls and Hawaiian musicians, each presented with leis and aloha greetings and a kiss. Miss Hawaii was photographed with us, and a delegation of JCs had a party arranged. Our good friend from the co-op that both John and I knew before we knew each other, Walt Lum, was there to meet us too, with Phyllis, his Canadian girlfriend. They drove us around. It was election day, and how colorful. The girls had a special suite for us at the hotel to tidy up. Pineapple juice, wonderful sweet rolls, and a gorgeous view of the ocean from the reef. Our hotel later, too, on the way back. Now for the long flight, all day. Hugh McKenna, past national president, and Martin Ashley from Hawaii joined us in Hawaii. We met Ludwig Berger, an Australian TV director just returning from England. During a whirlwind courtship, he'd become engaged to Miss Britain of 1955. She was a TV starlet, Brenda Mee. He was certainly excited. They were to be married at Christmas on a yacht. He'd bought some of her trousseau in New York. We had stops in Canton Island and the Fiji Islands, Nandi, so tropical, so native. Nandi had huge torches all around and bamboo walls. The Fiji Mokambo Lounge had a buffet of different fruits, juices, and tiny sandwiches. We're getting weary, and it's hot, hot, hot. Fred Sutton thought he'd lost his passport, so held up the plane till he found it in the lining of his coat. You could see the beads of perspiration coming out on his forehead. The pilot told him it would cost him $500 for running the motor and holding up the airplane. We were able to sleep on the plane and woke at 5 o'clock a.m. as the plane arrived in Auckland, New Zealand. Our first impression as we landed was that it was like an emerald jewel set in the blue sea. It was so lovely. The rolling green hills and blue water and streams. It seemed like an outpost, not very well inhabited. November 8th, and we lost a day crossing the international date line. We also crossed the equator yesterday. The JCs met us in Auckland. Very nice fellows. Tea and crumpets. We're astounded at the very British accents. A bus took us from the airport, and a very long trip to Wellington. Sheep and yellow gorse, yellow flowering weed that fascinated John. Rolling country, a little wild looking, weather cooler than anticipated, were first impressions. Wellington City was quite a surprise to us, looked about 50 years behind the times. Very old buildings, mostly all small English cars. Our old 1949 Studebaker we saw here, and it looked very modern. Never did see one like our 1956 car. We checked in at the Hotel St. George, very, very cold. The picture of Banff Springs Hotel in the hall on our floor. This is supposed to be one of the finest hotels, but we have a bathroom, had a hot bath, and got foot cramps from the cold. The maid kept popping in and out constantly. To Town Hall for the opening of the 11th World Congress of Junior Chamber International, a very formal affair. Jean and Wendell up on the stage. The native Maoris danced. The Governor General officiated at the ceremonial opening of the Congress. The heads of the countries and their wives in formal dress and furs made a lovely and impressive sight. We met John and Shirley Cable afterwards, who were to be our hostess at a party at their home the next night. Trade exhibits all around, and I was cold, cold, cold. Such a penetrating cold, and no central heating. Cold. November 9th, 1956. Jean and I went shopping. Can't even find cashmere sweaters. The prices seem high and styles seem a little dated. From here on, it seems to be a round of changing clothes and trying to be places on time. We went to the New Zealand Delegates' Luncheon, all wives included. We had soup, fish soup, cold meats, wines, trifle with jello and fruits, setting a pattern for meals for the remainder of the Congress. I was on the Jack Mabry radio show. Jean did well. She sang White Christmas, didn't say yes or no to questions, and won 10 pair of stockings. I was terrible and won £1. We went to a reception in the mayoral suite of the town hall. We were received by the mayor in all his ceremonial robes, Sir Robert McAllister and Lady McAllister. John presented him with a scroll from the mayor of Wellington. The press took photographs, and he was just beaming with pleasure. One photo of Sir Robert and Lady, John and me, we never saw. However, the one of John presenting it was in the newspapers. It's Friday evening, and the stores will be closed Saturday. However, they're open until 8 o'clock Fridays, so Jean and I took Wendell and John shopping at the Regal Fur Salon, and our indulgent husbands bought us each a fur stole. They certainly helped keep us warm with the lack of central heating, and also suited the occasions. We then went to the dinner dance at the Winter Show Cabaret. The huge auditorium, usually holding bales of sheep wool, was decorated beautifully with a false fishnet ceiling holding shells and items typical to New Zealand. There was a huge 10-foot stuffed moa bird that greeted us. It was labeled as an exhausted rooster, the term given to a JC who reaches the age 35 limit. A huge statue of a native, a three-dimensional view of New Zealand, fern and fauna all added to the decorations. This was really a gala affair. We had a dinner of about 8 courses, wines, went on and on and on, fish, cold meats, the works. We left about midnight, and they still hadn't come to the end of the meal. The presentations were interspersed throughout. We four were exhausted, a pattern to continue. Everyone wants our thoughts about New Zealand. I wept at the thought of Mark's 4th birthday. Saturday, November 10th, 1956. A cool day, and we certainly missed the kiddies. Ngare Smith, the wife of the president of New Zealand JCs, had an 11 o'clock a.m. tea for Jean. Beth Berg, wife of the vice president from Australia. Eileen McAllister, the wife of the international director from Scotland. Joan Collins from Auckland, New Zealand, and I. We discussed help, maids, sweaters, cake mixes, and traveling, and we had tea and scones. After lunch in the hotel, we took a scenic drive of Wellington and had tea at the Pines, a lovely tea house with a glass wall view of the valley and the bay. It poured rain, so we saw little from the Pines. I met a girl from Winnipeg who had 4 children. I said I'd call her mother if I went through Winnipeg soon. The girl's name was Evelyn Kariyama. She's married to a Maori native that she met during the war in Winnipeg. Her husband was busy at forums all day. At 5:30, we went to the American ambassador's cocktail party at the American Embassy. Jean and Wendell were received with the American ambassador. We met the Putaruru JCs who know Dorothy Thorne Collins from Saskatoon, now living in Putaruru. Miriam Parrott was her bridesmaid just before Miriam died. One of the maids serving the hors d'oeuvres asked if I didn't need a serving lady to take back to America with me. At 8 o'clock p.m., John and Shirley Cable had a home entertainment party for us at their home in Lower Hutt. The Maori dancers entertained and gave us poise. We were quite exhilarated by the native music and dances. The Maoris were supposed to have come in 13 canoes from the Hawaiian Islands. The facial characteristics, language, and dances have similarities, although the Maori dances and music seem more warlike. We had a lovely buffet supper, pavlova, passion fruit pie, meringue with whipped cream on top, and passion fruit spread on top. The hospitality was overwhelming, and everyone drank a toast to us and sang, "Now is the hour," and Auld Lang Syne. November 11th, 1956. Sunday and rainy. All day it rained, then became sunny, then rained again. We took a bus to Otaki where Reverend Hohepa Taipa, a Maori Anglican minister, preached a sermon in Maori then English. The church Rangiatia Maori Church, interdenominational, is a very unusual church with native paintings on the pillars inside. Hohepa is also president of the Otaki Junior Chamber of Commerce. Afterwards, the natives at the community house gave the traditional Maori challenge and welcome. A very warlike overture and dance and song, then more pleasant. The international president, A.D. A.Do Sales, accepted the challenge on behalf of all the delegates. There were more Maori dances outdoors and a Maori luncheon served in a huge tent. The food had been cooked on hot stones, and one of the items was cabbage cooked with eels. Replicas of the canoes the Maoris sailed to New Zealand in were given to the heads of each delegation. We then took a bus trip to Palmerston North and had the worst coffee ever. It tasted like fish. The JCs welcomed us enthusiastically, then to Masterton. We talked to the mayor, had supper, and watched a takeoff on the Olympics by the JCs. More speeches, bus riding, and gorse, the yellow weed that John enjoys so. He does not appreciate the 6:45 a.m. tea the maids bring in, nor having the maids pop in and out unannounced. One walked into the bathroom, and John had only his razor, not a stitch on. John's mother's letter saying the children are fine and to enjoy every minute of the trip are just what I needed. 10:30 we had a scenic tour of Hutt Valley on Monday and luncheon for the wives. The husbands are at their forums. Hutt Valley is very modern. Their library and community center building and ultra-modern Anglican church impressed us. We saw Shirley's house from below. They have a lovely view of the bay. 5:15, we had a reception at the Governor General's Mansion, Government House, and were received by His Excellency, the Governor General, Sir Willoughby Norrie and Lady Norrie. Later, one of the squires tapped us on the shoulder and led us into Lady Norrie's private chamber, where we had a chat with her, then a view of the formal gardens from the sitting room windows. Near the end of the affair, there was suddenly a swath cut through the middle of the party, and the General, Sir Norrie, and Lady Norrie walked out while the ladies curtsied. Then the pages shut the doors. Then they cleared away the canopies and cocktails, and we all left. The delegation parties were next on the agenda. I tried for a 5-minute nap and slept till morning. John attended briefly. We were exhausted. November 13th. Fine day. I had my hair done and then washed the hair by leaning forward. Luncheon and fashion parade for the gals. Also, they modeled slips and nighties. We managed to do a little shopping. I was interviewed by a reporter. 5:30 p.m. we had a cocktail party at the town hall by the New Zealand American businessmen and also the Canadian party. We met Mrs. Thornton, who has a daughter in Cleveland, Engare Taplin. Then we went to Dr. Kronfeld's home in Wellington, up on the hillside. Lovely home, interesting paintings, typical of New Zealand scenery, Maori weapons, very friendly people, interesting conversation, champagne, cold meats, ham, chicken, asparagus rolls, savories, hot meat tarts, pavlova, passion fruit pie, peach pavlova, and home brew. I got a recipe from Mrs. Kronfeld for pavlova. We went up to Mount Victoria to view the city and see the Southern Cross. November 14th. We went shopping. I bought books and toys for the children and rulers. There was an awards luncheon at the Blue Room of the National Art Gallery, the Putaruru Outstanding Award for Playground, and Manila, Philippines for cleaning up vice. Minneapolis Outstanding Local, stand-up luncheon, similar menu, wine, cold meats, chicken, savories, and sandwiches. An art and craft exhibit of Maori race. Jean and I were interviewed on the radio. She told of Little White House, and I told of the Cleveland Hearing and Speech Center, why I happened to be in the United States. The elections were tremendously emotional events. Ira Kay from San Francisco, from San Pedro, California, won over Felipe of Mexico, and Minneapolis won over Vancouver as the site. It was a surprise. Harold Berg of Australia was cited as the world's outstanding JC. Dr. Vargas of Honduras was one of the vice presidents, also Ralph Smith of New Zealand, and another fellow from China. In the evening, we went to the Winter Show Cabaret again. First had dinner at Hotel St. George and then to a cocktail party given by Gene and Russ Collins in the lounge. Thence to Cabaret. I took slides of a moa bird, Gene and Wendell and the Cables, and we had a similar type dinner dance. A special occasion, the presidential ball. Quite formal. We wore long white gloves. I wore a gold formal and my fur stole. Dancing, entertainment, presentations, more orchid leaves, dinner stretching into the late hours. Jean has been a credit to the United States. She looks nice, makes friends, everyone seems to like her. The Cables again were very nice to us. I got a pava shell. I'm really tired tonight. I packed until 4:30 a.m. and we got up at 7 o'clock a.m. This has been a very full week. November 15th, Thursday, beautiful day. We're off again, this time on our World Congress chartered bus. About 15 of us were Americans. Lovely scenery, sheep, gorse, hills, valleys, sheep and more sheep. Lunch at Taihape, very awful. Bones, and poor gravy. Worst meal in my life. Couldn't eat it. They have a bar, and to get a bar permit, have to serve meals, but don't care what they serve, if at all. I got a sponge stone and saw a volcano from Desert Road. We arrived at lovely Lake Taupo, very modern hotel built by a beer company. We had dinner with the Fords, coffee in the lounge with Collins and Fines, and we saw 3 peaks on the way. Tongariro, 6,458 feet, Ruapehu, 9,175 feet, and Ngauruho, 7,515 feet, 2 of which are active volcanoes. At this point, we felt we were in a very far away and strange place before we reached Lake Taupo. Editor's note: the journal ends here. To be continued. Well, that concludes today's presentation. Good luck to you with your efforts in family history. If this interests you, finding, preserving, and sharing old letters, diaries, photographs, family movies and videos, and interviewing elderly relatives while they're alive. You might consider checking out our website, Adventures in History with Peter J. Ray at peterjray.com. So far, we've made 660 history videos in 7 areas: world history, American history, book reviews, poetic tours, Cleveland baseball, family history, and autobiography. There's a donate feature. You might consider making a donation so we can continue making these videos. You also might consider checking out our podcast, Adventures in History, at Anchor FM, Peter Ray, REA. If you live in Metro Manila, Philippines, and are looking for a high school, you might consider Res Celeste Educational Center. Res Celeste is located in San Juan, Metro Manila, Philippines, Barangay Maytunas, not far from the corner of P. Guevara and Wilson Street. At Res Celeste, we specialize in helping young people who have had difficulty in the larger traditional high schools. We try to be innovative and creative. It's more than a school, it's a warm, supportive community and a family-type environment. And the website is resceleste.education, RESALEST. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care. And I'll see you next time.